Um, when and why did you start Highland dancing?
Well, I think I started Highland dancing when I was born, the day I was born. My mum was my teacher, so I don't think I had much of an option really. She was a dancer. My gran was from Aberdeen. So when she came to South Africa, she made my mum dance and my dad, not my dad, my uncle playing the bagpipes. So it was just in the family. So yeah, not much option. And then growing up, it was just kind of what we did. So by the time I started competing, I was 3 years old. My first competition was a week after my fourth birthday. So yeah, that's how I started.
And do you at all recall your first memory, like competitive memory as a dancer?
I absolutely do. The first competition is so clear in my memory, and it's quite a fond memory in a way. And I think it stuck with me right the way through and impacted later on. Um, I, I was just so little, so little, and that year in South Africa, they issued you your number for the year. So you had a number right the way throughout the season, and it came already printed on a piece of fabric. And when this came, it was bigger than my kilt. I was so little. So my mom took one look at this and thought, there's no ways because it would be pinning like right the way around me. So she cut out at the top, right at the top of the number, then right down the sides and right at the bottom. And she put that, and I was so proud of this. And I remember her tying my shoes, and then I said to her, right, Mum, I just need to go to the bathroom. And off I went to the loo. And as I came out, there was one of these prominent teachers there, and she said to me, what happened to your number? And I was so proud of this. I was like, my mummy cut it for me. And she took one look at it and she said, you're going to be disqualified. And I was gutted. I was just, my whole world came crashing down around me. But this little 3-year-old / 4-year-old inside of me, something just popped, and I thought, you're a bully. Do you know what? I'm going to show you. I'll show you. And I thought, when I got up on stage, I was like, I'm going to show that teacher the best paddy bar. And then after that, the best paddy bars and high cuts ever. And I think I did that then throughout the rest of my career, is that I'll show you. You know, you can't bully people like that. Yeah.
So throughout your dance career, you were a big inspiration to dancers, especially in South Africa. Who was that person for you?
I was thinking on this a lot because I had inspiration from a lot of places. It wasn't just one place. I had inspiration from world champions, and definitely Gregor Bowman was my big all-time inspiration. I remember going across to Canada one year, and I just fell in love with his dancing and these long legs, and I just thought, now how am I going to get long legs like Gregor Bowman? And and then eventually Colleen Rintamaki, she was just so incredibly steady, and to try and get my dancing to be like hers. But then also just from within South Africa and back at home, there was a lot of inspiration as well. My mom had an incredible dance studio that had multiple South African champions within the studio whilst I was growing up. And it was a real family. So I think my inspiration came from that love of Highland dancing from within the studio. Like, they were all family, as I've said, but to the point that I would call the dancing moms auntie. So there was Auntie Penny, who is Alison Conchi's mum, and that's one of my mom's South African champions. There's Auntie Anne, who was Bronwyn Parker's mum, who's also one of my mom's South African champions, and there's Auntie Else, who's Michelle Bean's mum, who's also one of my mom's South African champions. And they were just my mom when my mom was off teaching, because she was at competitions really busy and couldn't always be my mom. So I had sort of adopted everybody else's mom. so I got a huge amount of inspiration just from the ethos within the studio. And then I think that I also got a huge amount of inspiration from my teachers, which was my mum and then Shendel Russell, together combined. They're just two absolute powerhouses of women. They're just absolutely incredible women, and that just instilled the most amazing love of Highland dancing in their dancers, and encourage their dancers to be the absolute best that they can possibly be. And I think that I've taken that on, and that's why I try and personify that when I teach, when I judge, and just when I got up to dance as well, as just be the best dancer that I can possibly be.
Throughout your dancing career, was there any superstitions or rituals that you had to do before a competition?
There was no superstitions or rituals that we had really. My mum tried to keep it that we kept what we did at practice the same as what we did at competitions, so that there was no fluctuation in what was going on. But there were just a few things that I didn't do that used to drive people insane. Like I wouldn't eat. And it used to drive my mom and Shendel absolutely nuts, because they used to say, you need your energy to dance. And I'm just one of those people that I just get really nervous. I get incredibly nervous, and I just cannot eat because my stomach is weak and it just says no. And it actually ended up being quite funny. At the first year I won the Worlds, we had gotten into a habit of getting me at least to take multivitamins. So that, right, if you're not going to eat, at least have multivitamins in your system. So, right. So for the whole year leading up to Worlds, it was like, right, multivitamins, here we go. So we've been taking these multivitamins, and I still was, I'm pretty sure my stomach's not going to handle this, but in any event, so day one at Cal, take the multivitamins, and we're driving to the competition, and I say to Mom, stop the car, just stop. And she stops the car, and I jump out, and I find a bush, and I run around the bush, and I just have to be sick, because it's just the multivitamins food just didn't work. And I finished, and I looked up, and there was this whole family eating breakfast in one of the huts at Hunter's Tea with the glass front there, and they had all stopped eating their breakfast and were just staring at me. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And then I ran back around the bush, jumped back in the car, and drove off. It was hilarious. And I'm so sorry if that family still follows Highland dancing. I'm so sorry. But and then eventually Shendel got me to eat melon, and she used to cut it into little squares, and then it used to be this, well, if you eat 2 squares of melon before your swords, you know, it was a bit of a negotiation with me, but it wasn't with me, it was just with my stomach and my nerves. So that was the only ritual, so to speak, that I just wouldn't eat, and it wasn't me, it was my stomach.
So you mentioned Worlds there, and you're not only a 2-time world champion, but the only world champion to have ever come from South Africa, which is quite amazing. Is there a particular year that stands out, and why would that stand out for you?
Yeah, I thought about this, because the 2 years that I did win were very, very different. Just the days and how and what was going on. So the first year that I won, it was just my mum and I that came over to Scotland, and we were here for well over a month. And so it was a really special time, because for once I had my mum all to myself for a whole month. I didn't have to share her with another dancer. I didn't have to share her with my sister or my brother. It was great. And it was her and Shendel teaching, so then also I could have my mum a bit more just be my mum rather than my teacher, because Shendel sort of takes over from that point on. So that was really special. And then that year on the Friday, we had over 50 in our section, well, in my year category, so we had to dance twice. And it depended on which dance that you sort of qualified in, that you had to dance twice. So there were only a few of us that had to dance all 4 dances twice. And that final ended up taking place almost within an hour. So we danced that second championship within an hour, just about, after already having spent the whole day doing a championship. And then the next day we had to dance the whole championship again. So it was quite incredible to dance 3 championships within 24 hours. Yeah. That was, kind of mind-blowing. And I just remember coming off from the swords and my feet were cramping, and I remember saying to my mum, I need a banana to stop the cramping. And miraculously this banana appeared, and I thought, how did you do that? Like, my mom's magic. Where did she find a banana in this field? And it was also such a random request, and I think it was just my brain going into hyperdrive, because there was just so much happening and my feet were cramping, and we just had a job to get done. It was quite bizarre. It was quite funny. And then the second year, my whole family came across, including Auntie Penny and Alison. Like, really, the whole family came across. So it was a bit more of a social affair from a family perspective. And then that year I tied with Joanna Buchan. We both got 2 firsts and 2 seconds. So there was a bit of stress at the end of the day, so to speak, but I wasn't all that stressed about it. We were sitting there, and I sat with my mum, and I said to her, you know what, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. Tied, and if I come second, that's absolutely fine. I'm really happy. I've had a good day, let's just enjoy this. The rest of my family, not so calm. Auntie Penny had a polystyrene cup and a pen, and that polystyrene cup did not survive. It looked like Swiss cheese by the end of the award ceremony. But so they were all stressed, but I was really calm. I was very happy to come second if that was the outcome. Joanna Buchan's an amazing dancer, and so was everybody else in the lineup that year. So just to come in the top 6, is incredible. So you really, really can't complain. But then, yes, to then come out of it, having the win, that was just even more special. It did then kind of go, wow, that's kind of amazing. So neither of them really stand out per se, because they were just so different. And then from a South African perspective, though, being the only South African to do that is really special to me. Just for my country, to make sure that the South African flag is flying at KAU. Because up until that point, there hadn't been a South African flag flying. And the first year that I won, apparently there wasn't plans to have a South African flag. And suddenly they thought, oh, we better get a South African flag. And now there is this South African flag. And I think that is really cool. Really cool. And since then, there have been a few dancers that have gone over and done really well. And I'm proud of that too.
What did a typical day's practice on the lead up to the Worlds look like for you?
Leading up to KAU, we would generally taper down. We wouldn't be spending too much time exerting my body. And when I mean lead up, sort of like that last week. So after Commonwealth, try and take a bit of a breather, just because at that stage it's too late. Mom Shendel and I often discussed it. If you haven't got it right then, and you're not fit enough, then it's not going to happen in that last week anyway. So just trust what we've done. Just trust what we've done for the whole year leading up to that point, and what will be will be. But leading up to that, we would just work on what needed to be worked on, but we never overdid it. And there was never this frantic, oh, you need this to be absolutely like that. It was just like, that needs to be done. I was like, okay, that needs to be fixed. I'll fix that, and then I'd get it fixed for the next lesson. And we would, and that's just how we worked. And it would generally be 2 to 3 lessons a week, whether that was on my own with one or both, well, with one of the teachers, either in a class, because sometimes I was in a class with lots of dancers and sometimes I was on my own, but it was never regulated, sort of, you're going to be on your own today and we're going to watch you. That never happened. And generally also when I was with Shendel, my mum wasn't in class. Mum could wait outside, Shendel and I'd work together. And then when I was with my mum, which was generally when we were back in South Africa, I was in a big class with everybody else.
Did you find the traveling coming to Worlds quite hard, and then to dance? Because I know it's only like an hour time difference, I think, but it's quite a long travel. Was that difficult for you to adapt?
Yes, it was. I struggled. I don't think all dancers would struggle necessarily. I just happened to. And Shendel would always say to me, yes, you don't travel well. Yes, I don't travel well. I don't like the change in my surroundings. I'm one of those people that likes to know what's around me all the time and have things the same. So I struggled from that perspective. Also from the food being different to what was back at home. So I did struggle with that. But my mom was really good at trying to accommodate that. She really would go out and try and find the most normal food, so to speak. And sometimes that did involve us spending more money than, maybe others would. So South Africans eat steak. So coming over to Scotland and then finding steak and paying for that, is a little bit more expensive. But, that's just the amazing woman that my mum is.
What would you say is the main difference between competitions in South Africa compared to when you traveled overseas?
I would say the intensity is very different, and intensity in a few different ways. So back home in South Africa, perhaps intensity of competition is not as high as here. Here, obviously, because now I live in Glasgow. Here in Scotland and in Canada, and now I've judged in Australia. I never competed there, but I can see it there. The dances are far more competitive, and the attention to detail and technique is far greater there. And it's not to say that we don't have good dancers in South Africa, we really do, but there are just not the numbers to support it. So you'll have 1 or 2 really good dancers, whereas here there's lots of good dancers. So your intense competition is just far greater here, whereas that's not necessarily the case back at home in South Africa. Whereas for me, though, back in South Africa, it was really intense sometimes competing there, because everyone would stop and watch me dance. Yeah. So there are some days when you could literally hear a pin drop when I was competing. And whilst that's really great, and I really do appreciate that, and I take it as a massive compliment, the pressure of that weekend in and weekend out can have an effect on you. It's just sort of, is everybody waiting for me to make a mistake? Yeah. Or maybe I'm just not having a good day today, and I promise you, I'm fully aware of it. You know, I promise, and I'm so sorry, I will do better next weekend. You know, those kind of issues you start having to deal with. So yeah, those are pretty much the differences. And it's not to say one is better than the other, it's just different.
Yeah. So throughout your competitive career, sorry, excluding the Worlds, what would your favorite competitive memory be?
Oh, excluding the Worlds. Oh, because that my
Oh,
favorite my favorite
of
was
course.
at Worlds, but not winning the Worlds, not 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 that, so to speak. It was actually in the last set of high cuts, the first year that I did win, um, but it was in the last set of high cuts, and I came around, and there was just this moment that I had that sort of like everything around me just stopped, and it was just me. And I knew that the high cuts that I was doing were the best that I could possibly do, and that it didn't matter what anyone else thought, what anybody else was doing, what anything else was happening in the world, you know. It didn't matter, because right there and then I could feel everything. I was in control, and I was ecstatically happy with what I was doing. And that was my favorite competitive moment ever. I'm not sure many people, no matter who you are, what you do, have ever had that kind of moment where you're just completely satisfied with life. That's, you know, it's just life. I just absolutely loved it. And I think it just so happened to be at Cowell. I think that kind of moment can happen anywhere.
Yeah. So kind of on the contrast to that, what would be your favorite non-competitive memory that's come through Highland dance?
Um, these kind of roll through my head like a camera reel, because they're just so many. Um, and I've thought about it a lot. My favorite non-competitive memories generally tend to be the time that I get to spend with my mum, and the time that I get to spend with Shendel, you know, either practicing or even after practice, you know, that time that you just get to spend chatting once practice is over. You know, you're taking off your shoes and you're just having some bonding time. That to me is just so special. Other times that are really important to me are the times that I spent with my family in the car, you know, traveling to and from competitions, because South Africa, you've been to South Africa, it's really big. And I I used to compete a lot around the country, so my dad ended up driving a lot, a lot, and for hours and hours and hours on end. I think that my sister and I would probably get Olympic gold medals at I Spy with my little eye as a result of it, if it was an Olympic sport. Um, those, those memories are really important to me, that time spent in the car, just bonding as a family. And I think that there's even one time when I had come back from rupturing my Achilles the first time, when I first started to compete again. My body after the first championship had gone into a bit of shock, and it was my birthday that day, and we were on our way home back to my uncle's house, because we were in Johannesburg, and I was lying in the back seat with my head on my mom's lap, just looking out at the sun. Just my body was shaking, but my sister was in the front seat. And anyway, as a family does, you know, we're just chatting, trying to distract me from, you know, what's going on. And my dad says to me, well, you know, 25 today. I said, oh, is that the temperature outside? Like, no, you turned 25 today. I was like, oh, did I? Oh, okay. You know, and that kind of memory, that important family bonding time was really important, and that stemmed from Highland dancing. And then one other time that really just was so special for me, the day after I won the first world championship, my mum and Kersney Smith, McNeil's mum, Melanie Smith, went off to the step lectures and left Kersney Smith and myself to our own devices, dangerous at the best of times. And the two of us needed to feed ourselves. So as any two young teenagers would do, we decided, right, pizza it was going to be. But we were staying at our Jewish friend's house, but we didn't click when we ordered our ham and pineapple pizzas that perhaps this wasn't the best idea. So once we got our pizzas, we realized, oh, we're actually not allowed inside the house with these. So the two of us sat outside in the garden eating these pizzas. And we were just joking. I mean, the hilarity with Kersney is always just off the charts at the best of times. And we suddenly stopped and she looked at me and she said, "You're a world champion." And I just laughed at her. I said, "Oh, I suppose I am, hey?" And then we just carried on eating our pizza. It was like the most, unbelievable moment that it was just, life carries on. Yeah. That happened yesterday. And I said, yeah, that happened yesterday. But today, you know what? We're sitting in a garden eating pizza. That's sweet.
Yeah, so you briefly mentioned about an injury, and I was just wondering, was there any kind of setbacks and injuries that you had to really work hard to overcome?
Yeah. I unfortunately did develop a lot of injuries later on once I became a teenager. After the second time I'd won the Worlds, the following year I broke my foot at Cal. Then the year after that, I broke my foot a week before I was due to leave to go to Scotland. And then a couple of years after that, I ruptured my first Achilles tendon at World Pipe Band. And then a couple of years after that, I ruptured my second Achilles tendon whilst I was doing my TCRG exam, which is your Irish dancing teacher's exam back home in South Africa. So I've had quite a few setbacks. Each time I just worked through it. I had an incredible team of physios and doctors back at home. And I just worked through it, and you just realize that these kind of injuries are only as big or as bad as you allow them to be. You can work through just about anything, and you've got to realize that sometimes afterwards there are certain limitations, but you've just got to work within those limitations and just accept that maybe you can't quite do things the way you used to, and that's okay too. Just work around it. My second doctor was a little less friendly on my second rupture. He did say to me, perhaps it's time for you to realize that you've got the heart of a lion, but the body of a mouse. That little 3-year-old that said, "I'll show you." Yeah, she came to visit. She looked at this doctor. "I'll show you." And I will show you. And after that, I still competed again, and I went on to win another 2 South African championships after that. Unfortunately, I just was never strong enough to compete at the level required for Cal, but that was okay. That was okay for me, just to be able to say to the doctor, "Well, you told me I would never even be able to dance again." I show you, I can win a South African championship. That's just, I suppose, who I am. I don't take kindly to bullies.
So just to kind of finish on a high note, what would be your top tip for dancers striving to achieve what you did?
I think don't listen to bullies, and just be mindful about what you're doing. Just always think about what you're doing. Be be mindful, and it's not to say overthink things. Don't overthink things, but be mindful. Be aware. Aim for that moment in the high cuts at the end of the reel when you can say, "Wow, I'm in control, and I'm loving what I'm doing."